just a few words about Gary. Gary led the school. He is a turnaround director and a long stand for many years. He was the president of the Association for Character Education, and he took over a school in, I think,
early 2000s,
yes. Early 2000s, which was in the least 3% in attainment nationally. And then he had a very strong focus on character education and a very strong focus on structures and how he will explain today. And then the school within 10 years became one of the best 30% in the country. And so he will talk about this, how character education played a vital role in this transformation. And Chris Clyne is, I don't know how many schools you have, 60 or 30 and
yeah, 60.
And 60 schools, and they're all schools in very challenging circumstances. So they are Brennpunktschulen, how I would say, many of them are Brennpunktschulen, and all of these schools are very much above the average, performing above the average, and performing much more than you would expect such a school to perform. So I'm very happy that you're here.
Right, okay, I want to give you, I suppose, a story of character leadership. I do apologise that it is in English. I will speak, hopefully, reasonably slowly. And it's English rather than American English, so that might be a little bit easier. What I want to do is talk about my own experiences in character leadership, and particularly in turning around 3 separate secondary schools, state-run secondary schools, in what we would call, euphemistically in England, challenging circumstances. So if you consider a school where no parents want their children to go to the school, behaviour is appalling, academic attainment even worse, teacher morale, well, simply couldn't be lower. That's for the teachers that turned up for work. That's a picture of a school that I took over, and indeed schools that Chris works with as well. And I also want to talk about my recent experiences as being a Director of External Affairs for Birmingham University, the Jubilee Centre. And I've had the truly awesome benefit of visiting, I think it's close on 400 schools now of character, and being able to distill some of the very best leadership structures that I've seen. And what I can say to you, and I'm going to claim this with no modesty, this works. If you do it properly, this utterly works. So that's who I am. I won't spend too much time on that. That's me by the proper big wheel, not the one here, although that's pretty scary. And anyway, that's my background. But I did spend a lot of time as an advisor to the Department for Education in England, because they're not exactly into character education, if I was to be really blunt. They're into things that work, things that improve schools. And Ofsted, which is the inspection system in England, which is very powerful, have realised that their results show that schools of character are achieving amongst the best in the country, particularly in terms of student well-being, student emotional health, and academic achievement as well. So I think it wasn't always clear that there was a direct link between high quality character education and academic achievement. I'm pretty sure now that that is the case. And since Ofsted in England, obviously they measure schools very carefully, but they also insist that schools have a strategic plan for developing the character of young people. And if I was to be really honest with you, that has given the motivation to a lot of schools, because they're going to be inspected, to make sure that they're doing character. Hey-ho, that's the way it works. So the Jubilee Centre, if you get the chance to go, the website, lots of resources, not going to spend too much time on that. Similarly so for Association for Character Education. Clearly UK-based, but with schools accessing from across the world. Some of the best schools in England, character schools, are members of that group, and they are required to share their resources online. One of our ideas is that we want to reduce work of teachers, not add to it. We want to reduce their work. I've been quite astonished, and I know Chris is the same. Some of the creativity of individual teachers is absolutely wondrous, and it makes sense to share that with as many people as possible. So you would be able to access that. Very briefly, I want to almost start from the beginning, because I think it's refreshing to look at what is the purpose of school leadership. What does a director, a head teacher, a principal do? What is their key role? Well, when I took over King's English School, which as I described was very badly broken, I realised that because it was so badly broken, I needed to develop the culture of the school. I needed to be crystal clear about the values that were going to absolutely infiltrate every aspect of that school's life. You'll hear it again from Chris. Character is not something you can do at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. This has to be an integrated part of everything you do. The teachers must understand it, the parents must understand it, and the students must understand it. So the job, first and foremost, is to decide, the leader of the school decides, what are the values that are so crucial to this school? And those values must reflect the community and that wider community. I think school leaders have to be transforming the community they serve. We are not just schools for the children, for their academic work. It is our duty, and I do believe that, to transform the actual community that those schools serve. And if you do that, the results are absolutely quite fantastic. You move on then from once you've established the values, and they have to come from within you. Because as a leader, you're going to be constantly observed. Your behaviour, how you behave, how you respond to individuals has to be, well, perfect. If you're claiming values, you have to live those out on a daily basis. So it has to come from inside you. So I always say the story that it was my parents that ran the school in the beginning, because my values come from my parents. I happen to be a Catholic, which is relatively rare in England, neither here nor there, but I lived with a set of values from hard-working parents who instilled in my brother and I that it's our responsibility to get on in life, our responsibility to work hard, and they expected us to live by a set of values. It seemed to me only sensible that I expected the 1,000 students at my school to live and enjoy the same set of values. So then you have to determine, so right at the bottom, the next step is, what do those values look like? And as a head teacher, as a director, you have to determine exactly what those values look like in everyday part of school life. So what does it look like when the children are arriving at school? What does it look like at the beginning of lessons? How do lessons start? What does it look like when teachers are walking around the school and students are walking around the school? What does it look like when they're interacting with each other? You have to have an absolutely superhuman attention to detail to create the culture that you want. And school culture is the living out of those values. And the culture is something you do that you don't have to think about. Behaviours that are automatic. So when the children, if a school claims that the relationships at the school are excellent, then you should be able to see it in every aspect of the school's life. The way that people interact, the way that they know each other, that the respect between teachers and teachers, that the interactions are free of sarcasm, they're free of cynicism, and they are clearly based, and I don't make any apologies for this, clearly based on mutual love. Teachers have got to love the kids that they teach. It's an utter privilege to do this job. They only get one chance at it. And it's our job to make sure that that's the chance that they really get. So you've now set up these, what I used to call SOPs, standard operating procedures, or routines, that you demand that everybody follows. Because if you're going to give children and teachers the opportunity to develop the wider virtues, everybody has to have a clear understanding of the expectations on them. And those expectations have to be, frankly, rigidly enforced. I often recall, as a chap that I think does excellent work, Tom Bennett, he often describes it as the 3 R's, responses, routines, and frankly, it's relationships. The one thing that's a sole importance in all schools that determines culture is the quality of relationships. Okay, so now we're moving up a step. We've got the leader of the school has determined the values, the ethos. He or she has moved up to the next stop and said, well, what does that look like in everyday life? Every aspect of what the school does. And have I made it crystal clear as to what those expectations are? Then you start moving up to the next bit and you realise, as I quickly did as a head teacher, that the quality of relations was everything. And it dawned on me, it became apparent to me, that a lot of teachers, frankly, didn't know how to speak to children. They felt that the best way to actually have authority over children was to be stern, to not smile at them. Mr. Lewis, I'm not going to smile at the children. I'll have no authority if I smile at them. That's ridiculous. That was the sort of thing that I faced. And so I said, well, we're not having that. So I sent all the children home for one day, had all the teachers sit down, and we literally spent a day on how we all communicate. Vocabulary, the words that we use, which is only 7% of communication. The tone of voice, how we actually present our voice, that's about 33% of the communication. And the rest is body language, 70%. And how many of you have walked around schools and you see something like this? Mr. Lewis has said that I've got to listen to you. Go on then, tell me what happened. I'm sure it's going to be interesting. You see that all of the time. And as soon as you see a teacher doing that, that has crippled any chance you've got of creating a culture where character can flourish. So this inverted triangle I want to try and get across to you. And don't ever do anything without saying, why are we doing it? I always felt teachers, well, I believe it now, teachers have a very difficult life. It's a wonderful life, but it's extremely challenging. The jobs of people like me and Chris and other leaders is to reduce their burden. So I looked at things we were doing that weren't necessary. I saw teachers completing pages and pages of documentation that then went in a file, that then went on a shelf, that nobody ever looked at again. What a waste of time. Effort that was having nothing to do with the quality of education that the children were experiencing. We need to understand the psychology of such things as leadership. It's not easy. You have to be courageous. You know, I realized early on that I needed, everything I did at the school had to be with the three stakeholders in the community in equality. So whatever I did, I had to do with parents. Whatever I did, I had to do with teachers, and I had to do it with students. You are doomed if you don't work with all three groups of people. You must communicate all three. And you cannot, there is no such thing as over-communication. You have to do it to the point of boredom. I used to brief my teachers once, twice, 3 times. I want you to meet the children at the door. I remember seeing their body language. Oh no, he's making us do it. I want you to greet the children at the door. I want them to come straight in. I want you to smile at them. I called it teeth and greet. Teeth and greet. I want to see a big smile. And you see some of them trying to... Teeth and greet, and you must speak to at least 3 children as they arrive in the classroom. We're calling the unions, that can't happen. I didn't care. You are going to do it because we are going to have high quality relations in the school. Within 2 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, the whole atmosphere had changed. The children were beginning to sense that they were liked by the teachers. The teachers realised they didn't have to shout and scream at the children. Actually treating them as human beings with respect, care, and showing interest in them as individuals brought about the same response. If I asked any one of you to turn around to the person next to you and give them a big smile, what happens? They smile back. It's not possible. As human beings, we will smile back. So as soon as you smile, there's a whole stack of chemical reactions going on in your body. So let's make it easy for ourselves. So those are the bits where these systems, you have to get into the psychology of it. I don't spend too much time on this. A lot of people say to me, what do you understand by character education? Well, it is a set of values underpinned by the skills of those values, the virtues. Yes, I've seen something like 53 of them written around in schools. But I really still quite like going back to Aristotle. You know, this concept that actually, do you know what good character is? It's about making the right decisions. It's about looking at the options, deciding that this is the right thing to do because morally and virtue-wise it's the right thing to do, what impact is it going to have on me, and equally as important, what impact will it have on the people around me and the community. It's a simple objective for what character is. And I'm going to claim now within, well, from September to Christmas when I took over this school, by Christmas behaviour was exceptional. And I mean exceptional. Because children stopped behaving badly because they had no reason to. They had no reason to. They were being well taught by teachers that had the confidence to teach them, and they felt that they were enjoying a set of relationships which was investing in them as individual people. And they were making the right choices. Yes, we had these very clear parameters. You know, they had to be silent in lessons. They had to enter classrooms in a particular fashion. In England, of course, we wear uniforms. They had to have immaculate uniforms. They had to have that. That was non-negotiable. But very, very quickly, they realised that actually making the right decision to behave well is better than doing it because you're frightened of the sanction that may follow. I asked teachers when I joined the school, how will we improve behaviour? We'll have detentions for 2 hours, not 1 hour. In fact, Mr. Lewis, let's have them in on a Saturday morning. That would do it. Let's have them for 2 hours punishment on a Saturday morning. As if somehow children are going to improve because you punish them. Yes, you have parameters, and yes, they have to understand if they step outside those parameters, there's a consequence. But you want them to choose how to behave and actually understand that their behaviour affects them and other people. I learnt very early on that the most important things in life generally, and character in particular, is what I think are the three most important ones. Self-regulation, which is all about personal control, controlling what comes out of your mouth. And children have to take responsibility for that themselves. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's their responsibility. A lot of children use excuses. I can't do this because I've got anger management or whatever. That may be the case, but ultimately it is their responsibility to make the right decisions and our responsibility to help them make the right decisions. The other one is empathy. You can't do anything unless you can actually feel what other people are feeling. It's the core of such things as respect and equality. You have to be able to feel what other people feel. And it's a word that I made up, which I heard the English education minister use the other week. She said, I want children in England to show stickability. It's a made-up word, but it means sticking at something when you don't want to. Keep going when you're bored. Keep going when you're making mistakes. Keep going when you'd rather be doing something else. It's a key trait in life, and you know it. It affects you in exactly the same way. So, to make these choices, you have to remove the enemy of choice. So, routines and parameters give children the opportunity to make choice because it creates confidence and security. They know what's expected of them and they know exactly what's going to happen. That gives them the security to actually make the right choices. You must avoid what I see on a regular basis, which is the chaos of choice. I see it with parents. Parents that when their 5-year-old gets up in their morning, they say to them, what do you want to wear to school today? A 5-year-old doesn't know what they want to wear. And they go up the stairs and they put on the pink leggings. No, they don't like that because their sister's got blue ones on. So they go upstairs and change. And you've got 10 minutes of, I can't make a choice because you're giving me a choice. It has to be pertinent to their age. Same thing, I've seen my niece do it. Please don't tell her I told you this. But I've seen my niece do it with her 2 children. She comes home and they come home in the evening and she says, what do you want to eat? And she opens the fridge and says, what do you want to eat? And they argue for 20 minutes about what they're going to eat. The chaos of choice does not enable choice. Those children become agitated, they become anxious and stressed out by the fact that they're expected to make a choice before they've got the opportunity and the skill set to make it. So the routines and parameters enable them to build up the decision-making skills to make those choices. Understand the psychology of what a virtue is. And let's take something like stickability, a resilience, a word that we discussed at length today. I'm going to be quite challenging here to you, ladies and gentlemen. Children cannot develop resilience unless they understand that it hurts. You cannot be resilient unless it upsets you in a certain way, by definition. If you're doing something which is easy and it's not challenging you and it's not making you feel a little bit nervous inside, then you're not showing resilience. You might be working hard, you might be doing something you're passionate about, but you're definitely not showing resilience. And we've got an awful lot of young people today whose parents misunderstand what bringing up a child is. Yes, they love them, but they think that that love is about protecting them from every little bit of upset and failure that exists in life. And we have now, I'm talking generally now of course, we have a range of children who have never experienced failure, and if they do, it's not their fault because their parents insist that it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault. And these children are growing up unable to make those decisions themselves. I call it emotional vaccination. We remember in the pandemic, any sensible person would have a vaccination against COVID. They might be ill for an hour or two, but the idea is your body deals with the dead COVID viruses and then you're better. It's the same with emotional vaccination. Children need to experience upset. They need to experience challenge. And in schools of character, and Chris will tell you this in a few minutes, you must, and I use these words to try and get my point across, you must make children accept those challenges. So if you've got children that are shy in speaking out in an assembly, in a hall like this, they have to do it. You have to ensure that they do it. They have to overcome those difficulties. And that isn't easy. That is difficult to do. But I see too many teachers think they're being kind to children. And I ask a child, forgive me, they say, do you know the answer to such a question? And you can see the child going red and embarrassed. Don't worry, I can see you're upset. I'll ask Joanne over there because I know she knows the answer. I see that all the time from teachers. They don't want to upset children. And that's not the right way to go about it. Now, of course, you don't upset them for the sake of upsetting them, but they have to get used to this idea that showing character does require a bit of effort. Role modelling to parents is absolutely crucial. My last bit here, you must challenge parents. So for instance, and this will be my closing statement here, there's a lot of issues in schools now, and I know it's a problem here in Vienna as well, with poor not just poor attendance, but poor punctuality in the morning. So parents who arrive late because I'm paying for this, if I'm 10 minutes late, does it really matter? And schools don't necessarily challenge them. Now, a school of character actually writes to the parents and saying, we want children to be here on time because they need to show respect to other children who want to get started at the beginning of the day. We don't want them coming in late and disturbing the beginning of the day. And you constantly relay that message to parents. You have it in a policy document so they understand what it is, and you communicate. And then when, in a few weeks' time after you've communicated to boredom, that parent brings their child in late again, you tell them to take the child home because they're not welcome that day. That is the only way that you can set those parameters up and maintain them. I know it sounds very harsh, but it's how you do it if you want a school of character that works. Look, there's a lot more going on. I just want to flick through a couple of bits. Chris will talk about schools of character. It's through the curriculum. You can teach character mainly through moral dilemmas in all subjects, no matter what the subject. The most important thing is modelled behaviour, relationships, that's the crucial aspect, and character sort. That means children have the opportunity to develop their character. Now, there'll be some questions later on, but I want to hand over to Chris for the next section.
I'm going to give you a bit of a real-life story. Before I was a regional director at United Learning, I was a head teacher for many years. And I use character to drive whole school improvement. And I want to give you the story, and one that I'm really proud of Northampton Academy. And I'm going to tell you where it was, and then what we did around character, and then show you the impact that it can have. It's immeasurable. So yeah, as I say, I'm now Regional Director for United Learning, and I oversee 9 secondaries for whole school improvement. So I line manage 9 head teachers, but I also work with a way to be 60 secondary schools on character education programs. We fundamentally believe as a group of schools that this will drive improvement across the board. So before I became a Regional Director, the last 2 schools I worked in as a leader was Northampton Academy and a school in London called Northwood. At Northwood I had something called Recipe for Success, and that was actually where I first met Gary. I was kind of doing something, but I didn't know what it was, and then I met Gary and realised I was doing character, and it all kind of, the penny dropped. And then in Northampton Academy, a different approach, which I'll come to today. They were both incredibly dysfunctional schools when I started at both of them. The one in London was about to be shut down actually, and we managed to keep it open. And the same with Northampton. Both schools are now flourishing. They've got incredibly high academic outcomes, which I'll show you some data on. Excellent destination data. So what I mean by that is the children that leave the school go on to the best jobs, best careers, best universities. They're both heavily oversubscribed. When I joined the school in London, I'll tell you a bit more about the Northampton one, but we had 52 pupils in year 7, and we meant to have 180. The parents wouldn't send their children to the school. It's now oversubscribed in every year group in many more aspects. And it's not about Ofsted, but both are given the top rating now by Ofsted. Ofsted. Oh, that's the government quality assurance, so the inspectorate team that comes across the country. They can grade schools. This is the old measures because they're changing the framework as they like to do, keep us on our toes. But the old framework was outstanding, good, satisfactory, or requires improvement or inadequate. So the Northampton Academy story, and I'll start by giving you a bit of context so you get a feel for what the school was like. So it was in an area, or it is still in an area, because it still exists. It's in an area called the Eastern Districts. So actually, a bit of backdrop about that. I interviewed for the job and I was moving out of London, and the head teacher of the time, because I joined as a deputy for the first year or 2, had sold me that it was Northampton's a lovely area, it's wonderful, and I got to see some really nice parts of it, but he didn't show me the Eastern Districts. So it was a bit of a shock when I started. It was an overspill from London council estates, so as they got full in London, they would move these families up to Northampton, but they didn't build the infrastructure in the Eastern Districts to support these families. The school was 1,750 students, so 1,500 for ages 11 to 16, and then 250 students that were 16 to 18. The demographics, so 32 to 36% of the students in each year group are pupil premium. What I mean by pupil premium is a family household income is less than £7,000 per year. So there's real deprivation there. Interestingly, over time, the demographics changed. It was 40% of students, so 4 out of 10 students came from poverty. It's got the highest level of deprivation, so it's the most deprived top 20% in the country in terms of the pupils that attend the school. 45% of the students were white British. Every ethnicity was represented at the academy though, which made it really diverse. We had over 60 languages spoken within the school. Within the Eastern Districts itself, there was 26 active gangs. That's live as of today still, that operated within the community, which brought obviously drugs, weapons, crime, etc. that came with it. And one of our main feeder estates was called Blackthorn, one of the most deprived in the country. The ambulance services were unable to go in there without police escorts because they called for ambulances and then they robbed them for all their goods. I don't want to paint it as a horrible picture. There were some affluent areas that feeded into the school as well, and it's what we call a kind of mixed comprehensive state school. So where it was 8 years ago when I first walked in there, it was noisy, it was unstructured, there were students running all over the corridors. You couldn't really tell if it was break time, lunch time or lesson time. And they had 3 separate lunch times for the year groups who did that to try and control behaviour. But in order for them to know which lunchtime it was, they gave the children different coloured ties. So if you think of little Johnny, who's quite smart, would carry 3 ties with him and change them 3 times. So he would have lunch for 2.5 hours of the school day. They weren't taking registers of classes, so they were able to do that. Gary touched upon it, and this was awful. The relationships between the students and the staff was horrific. You'd walk around the school and you could just hear screaming, and that was the staff and the students. The students were just mirroring what was being given to them by the staff, and there was a lack of trust that existed as well. Relationships between the students themselves was very poor. Bullying was the culture, that was the norm. The teachers weren't tracking it, they weren't dealing with it, so the students had given up telling any staff about what was happening because they just didn't feel anything would happen as a consequence. Parents were very, very challenging. Within the first 2 weeks, I was in front reception being held by my throat against the wall by a parent who wasn't happy, and there's many other examples of that. They called the police on me as well within the first few weeks because I'd taken a child's phone because they were using it. It was a new policy we brought in, but anyway, it was difficult. We used to call the school Fight Club. Every single day there was a fight, and that would be in school, and it would also be after school as well. So we'd be constantly going up to the shopping centre, and we gave our numbers as leaders to all the shopping centre outlets so they could contact us because we're trying to build the trust back with the community. There was an area within the school that they chose to fight, which, remember as I've said that, because I'm going to show you a video later to show you what it is now. Gary touched upon it there as well. The policies in the school were so long and complicated, I couldn't understand them myself, let alone 100+ teachers, let alone 1,000+ students. So poor behaviour was just the norm. The teachers had kind of given up. Now we have something called exclusion, so if students are very poorly behaved, they can be excluded from school. I'm not sure if it's the same over here. But they weren't high in the school, but that's because the school weren't excluding children, they were keeping them in the school running around all day long or sitting outside offices. Their attendance to school, so again I looked at that before I joined, it looked very strong. Where is this getting recorded to before I throw them in? They were doing some irregularities, I'll leave it like that. I won't go into the details. There were so many safeguarding issues. They all use mobile phones everywhere. That was in lessons, that was at break, that was at lunch. So what they would do with the mobiles during lesson time is they would arrange for a fight that would be put around all the social media, and then you'd see hundreds of children congregating, and you kind of knew what was about to happen because it was a daily occurrence. But teachers in the school just couldn't teach, and students did not feel safe. So the only way was up from there, obviously. So we had to kind of start with why. And that was where, coming from a school where I'd done this successfully, I could stand and narrate it quite confidently. And you've got to underpin everything, as Gary said, with the why. And why would you not want to be in a school where the culture is much more positive, therefore you get better behaviour and better relationships? If you say that to any teacher or student, they're not going to say, I don't want that, that doesn't sound good. We're here as educators, and that's the big thing. We have the privilege of leading schools, and you have the privilege of leading schools. You get to serve your community, and you get to develop the next young people who will hopefully flourish in future, and have that phronesis of doing the right thing, right time, for the right reason. There's research around support networks. Those who have good support networks are able to have more stable friendship groups. And when you talk to children around that, they understand the importance of why you're doing that. Every employer is looking for it. Everywhere you go, employers are desperate to look for these virtues and values. You can teach skills for for a career, but you struggle to teach the character when it's very well ingrained. Helps them handle pressures of school life, better exam outcomes, not why we do it, but I'll show you what the impact it has, plus many, many more reasons. But you've always got to start with a why, 100%. And if you break down school improvement, it's not actually that difficult. I say that tongue in cheek, I know it's difficult, it's a lot of hard work. But you sort out the behaviour and culture, therefore make people feel safe. You need to have those two, and I put those two deliberately first because you can't do anything else with school until you've got that right. Then you get the curriculum well sequenced, planned, delivered, and deliver it with good pedagogy. You do those 4 things, but have character running through every single aspect, like a sticker rock, you'll improve your school. And I'll show you the impact that can happen. Not just in this school, I'll give you another couple of case studies as well. So we decided at the beginning of the journey, first thing we did was reset the vision. Our vision was very clear, to be an academy of character and excellence, but we needed a set of values, and we spoke with all the key stakeholders. We spoke to parents, we spoke to staff, and we spoke to students. And we came up with the 5 virtues that we decided to focus on initially. Determination, we chose that because the children just gave up and staff were giving up all the time as well. Ambition, there was a lack of ambition within the Eastern Districts. The children couldn't see their life beyond the Eastern Districts. They thought that was their life. The respect was easy, it didn't exist, so we needed to manifest it. Integrity was going to be key, which I'll come back to. And intolerance was because it was such a diverse school, but there was no mixing. The white kids spoke to the white kids, the black kids spoke to the black kids, and there was segregation everywhere. So we wanted a virtue to underpin it. And I'll come back to that one because we landed that quite poorly in lessons learned. And that came with our pillars of virtue. The key thing we were trying to point out here is it didn't mean that these were the 5 only important ones. They were important to us as a community, of course, but there's many more that make up good character. But the issue I see, and again I've been in a lot of schools around this, and this is something that always resonates with me. Values are not laminated, they're lived. I was in a school recently, and true story, it said, we are a school of ambition. And I was speaking to a teacher about the school, and they're saying, well, they're bottom set, they're low ability kids, what do you expect? And I said, you know, they're not role modelling, it's just a value in the wall. Well, you commonly go into schools, we're a school of respect, and you see a teacher screaming at a young person. They're just not living them. You've got to live and breathe them. And for us, it's all about, or what we focused on as the end goal was this here, phronesis, which practical wisdom, but we broke it down into very simple language for the children. We wanted the children and the staff to make the right decision at the right time for the right reason. And that's our vehicle and what everything we work towards in the language that we used. So there's caught, there's taught, and there's sought. I'm going to focus on the caught and the taught aspects, and the teaching of character is incredibly important. But what I've said all along, you can have the best resources, the best assemblies, the best lessons. It comes back to the staff and the staff role modelling and relationships. And the quality of relationships that you develop between the students and staff will make or break. And the staff acting as positive role models all the time. And a couple of things from the Jubilee Centre that I fundamentally believe in, that the character and integrity of the teacher is more fundamental than anything else in class, and it is caught, character is caught through role modelling and emotional contagion. And therefore, what Gary talked about, the culture, the ethos, is fundamental. And staff role modelling was everything, and I give you an example here, and this was something that I had a kind of script that I spoke to staff at every single interview before they joined the school. Character education, they had to have alignment to our vision and values, obviously. Positivity, and Gary told me to explain to you what a mood hoover is. We all know that person that comes into a room and can just make everyone miserable within 2 minutes. It happens in staff rooms across the UK. I'm sure it's similar here in Austria. Schools are tough places to work. We know that, but it's important that we are role modelling positivity in front of the students at all times. I talk about loyalty, and it was so important that it wasn't about loyalty to me, It was about loyalty to the community and to the students, and to be there for them and each other through bad times. It's easy to be there when things are easy, but be there when it's difficult. We talked about being open and transparent, and that was my key. I always apologised to staff, I apologised to students, and I apologised to parents when we got things wrong. Because you've got to be able to do that in order to heal and to move forward. But then I also said, I've got to trust you as adults. You're the experts, you're the psychology teachers, you're the maths teachers, you're the cleaners, etc. You're the experts in the field to give them that psychological safety. And I'm not going to go down each one because I'll run out of time, but one of the key ones as well is the humbleness. I spent as much time speaking to Max and Pat, who were two of our cleaners, as I did with my vice principals, because they were as important as everyone else. And that was me role modelling to staff that none of us are more important than anyone else. Just because we're senior leaders doesn't mean that we dictate everything. We're just got a part of a functionality within a school. And also the teamwork element. I picked litter every single day. Every single day before school, I was out the front of the school picking litter. Break time, lunchtime, after school, I had that picking stick. So I had to show everyone that if I am able to do it, you're able to do it as well, and role model it. I cleaned the toilets if they got dirty. I just tried to show that it's not about me being anything better than anyone else. We're all in it together, and role modeling that to everyone else. And this is something that I say all the time. A fish always rots from the head down, and it comes down to any organisation or state that fails, the leadership is the root cause of it. And it's true, you walk into any school that's failing, it comes back to the leadership and poor leadership. And often you see these values across the walls, but the leaders aren't living and breathing them on a daily basis. So at the school, and this will be small, probably too small to read, I had a manifesto, an SLT senior leadership team. And this was something we put together as a team, agreed as kind of our way in which we'd work. And I held the team to account. This is who we are on a daily basis. That was shared with staff, that was shared with parents, that was shared with students. And I asked anyone to tell me if any of my team did not role model them at all times. And they'd be quick to come and tell me if they didn't think that one of my team were doing that. But that was fundamental, that we as a senior team were role modeling that day in, day out. We had to set the tone every single day, but the clear thing I said is every single interaction you have as staff is crucial to this being successful. Every interaction is an intervention, is what we talked about. Those little key moments that work throughout the day have huge lasting impact. We had to do work with parents as well, and you may or may not know this, it's kind of a crass experiment around observational learning, but it's incredibly impactful. And doing this for a set of parents, kind of had these parents came in sniggering and laughing, thinking it was funny, and then when they watched this you could see the shift and change. This was an experiment that was done by Albert Bandura, exposed children. So 24 of the children watched some adults be aggressive towards a doll, and 24 of the children watched the adults being kind to a doll. You can see here the children that watched the adult being aggressive, when they were then given access to the doll, completely copied the behaviours. The ones that seen the kindness copied the behaviours. It's a really impactful way to show the impact of role modelling and how children pick that up. We did that with parents, we did that with staff as well. Feedback from that was incredibly positive, but we had continual CPD with our staff around role modelling, giving, like Gary said, scripts and how we wanted them to be. The Hollywood smiles we talk about, grit and teeth, similar idea. The positivity, always narrating that. But myself as a leader and my leadership team went to every single lesson, every single day to make sure that that was happening. And it wouldn't be in observing, it might just be popping our heads in, but we were omnipresent, we were everywhere at all times. And role modelling your values and good character to each other all the time, we'd always ask staff to reflect, because it's very easy on the first day of term, you come back after a nice holiday, you're all positive, you're all energised, and you're probably sat here just now going, I'm pretty tired. And that's where it becomes difficult, when you're tired. But allowing the staff the space to talk about that in a nice area among staff, not to students, with each other, reflect on it. what's not gone well today, what can we do better tomorrow, is incredibly important. But I'll come back to it in a minute. We did everything we could to make sure that we didn't have tired staff. Gary talked about it there. I talk about stripping out the noise. I just want teachers to come and teach excellent lessons and not do anything else. That's all we want. We want them to do their fundamental role. And us as leaders did everything we could to strip that away. As well, something we talked about, I'm sure you've all been in meetings that last longer and longer and longer. And then by the end, what are you like? You're tired, you're drained, you're not absorbing anything. So we had no meeting that lasted later than 1.5 hours in the school, and we committed to that, and I did that with my leadership team, and I made sure that happened with every meeting within there, and I would stop it. I would just stop it. Didn't matter, that was it, we're done. The cut-off point was 5:30. If it's that important, we'll pick it up to tomorrow. But that was really key that I role modelled that, and then that cascaded down, so we didn't have long, boring meetings for staff to have to sit and go through. We realise as well, it's difficult in schools. You might be teaching the full day, and then you might also have to do some duties at lunchtime or break time. That's incredibly challenging in order on individuals. So we're really conscious about looking at our staff workload and ensuring that they didn't have full days when they'd also be doing these duty spots as well. Just again, to make sure that they had the ability to then role model the character and feel their best self. We did a lot of work around line management, and that was something that was incredibly key, because we realised that, in fact, that's something that has to be in place in a school. And sometimes you see here in UK schools, I don't need to do it because I'm speaking to them every day in the corridor and in the common rooms or where it may be, but that was important that they had that time to do it. And the first question in line management with the staff as a line manager was always, how are you doing? Asking them how they are doing rather than, have you done this? Have you done that? How are you? And it opened up that conversation that way. And Gary talked about the role modelling and something, you've all got them and you'll have all had them, the nightmare class, and the class that you really look forward to. And thinking staff to reflect on how they are, because when the really difficult classes come in, you tend to be stood, arms folded, looking quite angry. When the class you love are coming, morning, how are you? And we did a lot of work around the fact you've got to think that you've always got the best class and treat them all exactly the same. We built this to look after the staff, to make them able to be their best selves, because they cannot be educators of character if they themselves don't feel good. And this was a big manifesto that we did. We gave every teacher a morning or afternoon off. We built the curriculum around it so they could do things that are important to them. Some staff would take their children to school or pick up their school. Some would go to walk the dog. Some would go to the gym. I didn't really care. It was whatever was important to them. But we created a culture where staff coming and going, it didn't matter what time they were coming and going. In the UK, there's a thing where people look at their clocks if staff leave a bit early. I don't know if it's the same in Austria, but it would create stress and anxiousness amongst staff. And just being present doesn't make you productive, was the other thing we talked about. And they're adults, I trust you, just make sure you're doing your role and just be there to teach the children very well, was the key thing. So we did a lot of work around looking after the staff as well. We then taught it to the kids through a whole ream of things, assemblies, tutor time programs, through subjects, various things, guest speakers and so forth, but we rewarded them. We could talk about catching good character. We continually did that and flipped the narrative and used positive language rather than the negative language that always remained. So they were some of the key things that we did initially, but it had to be more than that. And we embedded it across the whole school. And you may or may not have seen the Jubilee Centre have an evaluation hand tool that's quite outdated now. I think it's been updated currently. But that ensured that character was running through every key aspect of the school. Every single aspect of the school had a grid that looked like this, and we would self-assess every single half term, and then we'd bring that to the senior team, and then we look for evidence how we're moving the school forwards. We built an evidence bank for each area as to why we knew where we were at, and then we would action plan. So we'd have that for the 8 different areas within the school to make sure that we had character running across everything, from parents through the curriculum, through enrichment, through governance. Every single aspect of the school character would run through that, and that was continually done. And that's still used today in the school as their action planning tool. So we made sure character wasn't another thing, and we made it everything. And it was a stick of rock where you cut anywhere in Northampton Academy, character was oozing through. But every good story has a good ending. So I'm going to tell you now where the school is at and the impact that it made. If you walk around the school now, silent, productive corridors, classrooms, they're fantastic. There's a buzz, but it's a buzz of children learning and working hard. Highly positive relationships between students and staff. In my time, towards the end, we'd never hear a raised voice. I still go and visit regularly because I'm a regional director. It's one of my schools. It's exactly the same. Students now, this isn't segregated, all the children mixed together. You see them different year groups, different ethnicities. There's none of this kind of group mentality that existed before. I'm not going to tell you bullying doesn't happen. Anyone that tells you bullying doesn't happen in their school means bullying is rife in their school and they're just not aware of it. It does happen, but the kids tell the leaders and it's dealt with quickly and effectively. Parent complaints are very low. There's the 3 parents there that just love complaining constantly. I think every school has them, but they're very, very low. The fights just stop. It doesn't exist anymore. We used to talk about breaking lunch was so stressful for leaders because you were just waiting for something to happen. Now it's relaxed. It's leaders talking to the students and sometimes playing table tennis, basketball, whatever it would be. There's really simple, clear behaviour policies. This isn't to say that there's still not sky-high expectations, but it's around values and choices, like Gary said. The students are choosing, and they're really clear on what happens if they make the wrong choices. But then if they make the wrong choice, we then put in a lot of work to then help support them not make that choice again. There are the odd exclusion that has to happen, but they're very rarely used now, and if they are used, they're appropriate. And this might not seem fantastic, but in the context of UK schools at the moment, 2% above national average is quite significant. It's very strong because the students want to come and attend the school. Safeguarding is exceptional. The phones you just don't see them. Now, I know the children probably are in the toilets at times looking at them. That's fine, I get that, but they're not used at all across the school or in lessons. Teachers talk about how they can teach, students can learn, and the students feel safe. I show you this, and it's a lot of data that you may or may not understand, but hopefully you'll see kind of on the left is at the start of our journey, and that was kind of the first few years in. You can see the number of children that are getting dealt with for serious incidents just dropped and dropped and dropped. Attendance increased, increased, increased. Children were attending school and they were behaving. So we're seeing real impact in terms of hard data. And that's supported as well by some research that's been done in the UK at the moment by the Jubilee Centre around schools of character. This here was Fight Club. So this was the veranda where the students used to all come and fight every single break in lunch. So this was in the last year that I was there. We decided to turn it into a golf driving range. The whole concept is we were now giving students golf clubs at break and lunchtime. If you gave them golf clubs 8 years ago, we would have been calling ambulances with a police escort. And this is just some of the work we did to the environment. It's kind of blocked off with virtues everywhere across the school, just so you get a flavour of Northampton. This was a staff survey the second last year that I was there as heads. When I started there, we surveyed them every single year. The staff, every metric was between 60 and 70%. You can see there 99% of the staff valued the school's culture. 98% were proud. And we've seen the same in my last year as well. They were incredibly strong in terms of the metrics and how the staff felt. And I think the really key thing for me was the recommending the school to friends or families, and them feeling proud. In 2017, there was 440 applications for Year 7, and not all were first choices, and that's now the most oversubscribed school in Northampton, and have been for the last 3 years, with 900 applications for the 270 places. We now have 2 weeks where we have to go to the local authority and hold appeal meetings with hundreds of parents unhappy that they've not got a school place. This here was one of the first slides I gave to the students when I launched this. And I would have 200 students in an assembly hall, and I would put this slide up, and I would just hear, keep it, 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 because they just didn't get the concept. And we narrated why the importance of doing this is. And then within the first year, we'd had over £200 handed in, and regularly the children would hand in phones, jewellery, bank cards that they found in the local community. And you remember I said at the start, these children are from some of the most deprived families in the country. The amount of times I had a £20 note handed in that would have made so much difference to their family, but they understood the right thing to do. Every time they did that, I wrote a letter to their parents, just saying what a fantastic sign of character that was, and that became a daily thing that I was doing it for. It may be that some students were doing it for the wrong reason in the end, because they wanted a letter home to their parents, because they wanted to do something at the weekend, but they got the concept. If you want to see a school of character, seagulls. So we have an issue with seagulls in the UK, and we used to have the seagulls arrive to our school, and they would come out, they knew the time, 1:30, end of lunch, you'd have 100 seagulls swooping in. It was an all-you-could-eat buffet. There was so much rubbish around the school. They would eat themselves and they'd sunbathe for the rest of the day. Roll on today, those seagulls still come, but there is no food and they just fight. So you know you're a school of character when you're fighting seagulls. The school's considered one of the most successful schools in the country in terms of a character development programme and its direct impact on standards, and it still remains as a school of character that's seen as one of the top within the country. This was the last few months of my time at the Academy. We had the inspection of Northampton Academy, and we're given outstanding across every aspect of the school. Throughout the report, and this is just some things lifted of it, the inspectors talked throughout around character and our students showing our values at all time. And I focus on the last bit there, our differences unite us. So when we launched tolerance, the kids didn't understand it and see it as a negative thing. I tolerate people, so we flipped the narrative and then started talking to them about our differences unite us. And it was so satisfying to hear that come through the report. This here was My Culture Day. So this is something that became part of the school, where the kids came in their cultural outfits and they learnt about each other's culture. That would not have been possible at the start of the journey. That would have created a war. But we're able to celebrate that every year. And again, the inspection team talked about the values permeating through every aspect of the school. Pupils thrive at this school, and they know that staff go above and beyond. I just want to stay on the above and beyond for a second. If you build a culture where you really look after your staff, the discretionary effort you get from your staff means that they'll go above and beyond for those young people.
Chris, this is the inspectorate.
Yeah, this is straight from the inspectorate.
About your school.
Yeah. So this is straight from the inspectorate report, which is available online. If you're still not convinced in this as an approach, in 2016-17, Progress 8. So Progress 8 of 0 means you're doing okay. Anything above 0 is starting to get good. Anything below 0 is not very good. So at the end of our first year, we got 0.06. Yeah, so they do English, maths, science, history or geography. Then they'll do a language, and then they'll choose 3 other option subjects. So that could be design technology, PE, music, etc. And they take those 8 subjects, and then if the student arrives, they will be tested before they come to secondary school, and they'll have an expected standard that they should leave secondary school at. If they meet that expected standard, they get a score of 0. So if you imagine all the students, you bring all the results together and you get progress 8 overall. So if it's greater than 0, it means overall they've made better progress. If it's less than 0, it's worse progress. So if we forward on to 2022, 2023, we moved them to +1. So that meant every student in the school, on average, made a grade better than they should have done within the school. It put us in the top 1% of schools in the country. So there's 5,000 roughly secondary schools. So I was really proud to leave at the top 1%. And we were the top 50 schools in the country for disadvantaged students. So those students that come from household incomes that are very poor. It wasn't a flash in the pan. The year before, we were 42nd school in the country. And that's been sustained after I've left as well. It's dropped off slightly, that's because I'm not the head teacher anymore, but it's still incredibly high. So it's not just another thing, character is everything, and it was everything. And it wasn't about something else getting put onto their plate. I talked about being the plate. And if you make it the plate within the school, great things happen. But it's not a one-trick pony, and I just want to quickly touch on 2 other schools. So this school here is called Northampton Academy. This is straight from the BBC News, and the first week I took over this school, I had to go on national radio to talk about the school and the bullying culture that existed. It is the worst school I've ever walked into in my life. It was out of control. That was 18 months ago. They took an approach, and you can see there their vision to be a successful school of character and excellence. They might have stolen it from Northampton Academy, which is fine, but they chose a set of values that they wanted to focus on. And I asked Ben, who's the principal there, just to write something for me in advance around character. I'm not going to read it all, but you can see his first opening line is, I had my initial reservations about character work. As it goes on, he then explains he has seen the huge impact that it's had within the school. If we move forward 18 months in Northampton Academy, I was there on Monday, yesterday. I'm losing track of time. I was up at 2 o'clock this morning, so I'm quite tired. Silent, productive corridors. The suspensions, the children being excluded, has dropped by 50% in 1 year. The attendance has increased by 4%, which might not sound a lot, but it's staggering. Parental complaints have stopped. They've got their highest Year 7 numbers for the last 5 years. Students are happier, staff are happier. They've now got a full body of staff because people want to go and work there. Students understand the values, they're starting to live them, and narrating them, plus many, many more things. So the power that it can have in such a short space of time is quite staggering. And another one, North Oxfordshire Academy, 18 months ago when I first visited the school, I sat down with the head teacher and I said, everyone is just a bit miserable here. They're so unhappy, the students and the staff. And again, they decided to take a really conscious approach. And the head teacher there, you can see, if you had asked me 2 years ago about how to improve the school, I would have said all the usual things around curriculum, behaviour, teaching and learning. However, I think that shows my lack of insight into how powerful a taught character curriculum really is. And she goes on again, talking about role modelling, culture, character caught, integrity, kindness. Again, the impact there has been quite significant in a very short space of time. The students there are happier, they've got a sense of belonging, the staff are happier, they've got a moral purpose. It's just such a better school than it was. So character education, if you fully buy into it, it will drive whole school improvement. And yeah, that's all from myself. Thank you.